The BRE Trust funded several pieces of research that led to the development of BREEAM Infrastructure, and this was fundamental research that defined the scheme and is now being used in developing the next version of the scheme, which will combine with CEEQUAL as the new next sustainability rating scheme for infrastructure projects. The main piece of research that the Trust funded was to do with developing the core technical standard for the scheme. This is where the content, the process, how the scheme will work is defined. Secondly, we were looking at early stage optioneering as to, well, BREEAM normally looks at the construction of the asset, and optioneering says, well, before then you are deciding whether in crossing a river, whether you're going to have a bridge, a tunnel or a ferry, and which is the most sustainable of those options. So we did a piece of work to understand how we could develop a tool perhaps that would help that decision-making process as to which is the most sustainable option at that early stage, and that was a very useful piece of work that the Trust supported. Thirdly, we were looking at system boundaries. Now, within a BREEAM scheme, each different aspect has a different boundary. So if you're looking at waste, then the effect of waste is one boundary. If you're looking at ecology, then the effect of ecology on a project is a different boundary. And so how do all those boundaries fit together in the assessment process? And so that was a very interesting piece of research that the Trust supported to help us understand how those systems worked within a single system of BREEAM. And finally, we were looking at more technical content, where for resilience, for materials, for waste, we looked at what good looks like in that area for the infrastructure sector, bearing in mind that infrastructure is quite different to buildings, and we were very conscious of that. Although the headings in BREEAM are the same no matter what the scheme, the things that are actually being considered within those schemes are different for the case of a building as it would be for a civil engineering project. And so here we were looking at, for each of those three categories, looking at what does good look like, what is best practice, what sort of achievement should we be rewarding within the scheme with credits. And that piece of research was supported by the Trust, and we had to replicate that for all the other categories as well. We were approached by several from industry who, having experienced the sustainability work on the Olympic Park, now found themselves in other civil engineering type projects and felt that the BREEAM approach to having a more of a science base, to having more outcome focused criteria and more metrics was the way that they would like to go. Many other schemes were more process based. So industry wanted to have a scheme that incorporated all of these science based factors but also had the credibility of being relevant to the civil engineering sector and wasn't seen as being a building scheme rebranded. The scheme was developed and launched in January 2015 and 8 projects are registered with it. We're working with those as they progress through the process. And the feedback we're getting from how they are using the scheme is really helpful, and we're understanding more about the criteria and feeding that into the development of the new version, which will take over from it when we combine it with CEEQUAL later this year. Industry didn't really want 2 schemes to choose from. They didn't want to choose either CEEQUAL or BREEAM Infrastructure. And so we were encouraged to work with CEEQUAL to see whether we could together produce a single scheme. And that was a very interesting process. We spent a year probably discussing with CEEQUAL how that would work. And from a technical perspective, it was clear that together the good bits of both would make something that was quite special for the future. And commercially how that would work was more complex. And in the end, BRE acquired CEEQUAL in November 2015, and that was seen as a very positive and amicable approach to how we would move these schemes forward together. And so since November 2015 we've been working, CEEQUAL's been part of BRE, and we've been working together to produce this new version. So from early 2016 we started developing this new version that would bring the 2 schemes together, and that's been a very positive process. We have a steering group that's made up of people from CEEQUAL, people from BREEAM, people from industry who meet regularly to steer that process. And we're really about bringing together the best of both schemes into something that will lead the world in terms of sustainability rating and standards of best practice for civil engineering into the future. And we're really focused on developing something that really does move things on to another level. We aim to launch the new version of the scheme later this year. We'll continue to call it CEEQUAL because the name CEEQUAL has been around for 15 years and is embedded within clients' specifications, procurement documents, contracts and so on. And so we wanted to keep that link. But the style of the logo will reflect clearly that it is part of BREEAM. The technical content will have quite a lot from BREEAM built into it, which is where we wanted the scheme to go, to have more science-based, more metrics-driven, more outcome-focused criteria. But the benefits that the scheme delivers to projects will remain the same for BREEAM Infrastructure as for CEEQUAL. There are a range of benefits that using BREEAM and CEEQUAL as a sustainability rating tool deliver to projects. Firstly, as an improvement tool, using the scheme to drive innovation and get better outcomes for the project. In addition, in managing resources more effectively, costs can be saved, carbon reduced, materials used more efficiently. Thirdly, many projects use CEEQUAL as a framework, if you like, to manage sustainability impacts of their projects, to help them decide which are the key areas they need to focus on and which are the others, which ones are going to deliver the best benefit for their project. In addition, because the scheme is a third-party verified certification scheme, this isn't just the project saying it's achieved some good outcomes. This is an independent party saying that they have, and that's really good to have third-party accreditation to demonstrate to others that the project has achieved really good outcomes. And many clients and contractors and others use this as a way to show how they are able to deliver projects much more sustainably. The scheme allows projects to be benchmarked, to compared against each other. And also the project teams have something to strive for, something to celebrate when they finish the work, and something to feel really proud of on completion.